So, as I said, my name is Joel, and I am a yogi. I've been in the process of releasing a lot of these labels that we tend to attach ourselves to when engaged in spiritual practice, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But why yoga and 5-MeO-DMT? Why the combination of these two wonderful tools? What is yoga, firstly? Contrary to what we may have come to think in the West, yoga is not a series of physical postures. Yoga is not an exercise to get you flexible. Yoga is a system of self-inquiry. Yoga literally translates to union. Union with what? Union with the infinite, with the divine cosmos. I'm going to attempt this. All right. So, yoga is broken down into an eightfold path by a sage named Patanjali, somewhere between 300 and 500 BC. He called these scriptures the Yoga Sutras. And in these scriptures is this eight-limbed path. And the eighth limb is samadhi. Now, samadhi is a word for which there is no English equivalent, but we see this concept across the world through different spiritual practices and different religions at the core. Samadhi is essentially a cessation of self-activity in which the individual awareness or the ego dissolves and one's awareness merges with the infinite everything, the big one. When we speak of samadhi, or when I speak of samadhi today, I will mainly be speaking of nirvikalpa samadhi. There are many different levels of samadhi, but nirvikalpa would be the most relevant as it is strikingly similar, if not identical, to the 5-MeO-DMT peak experience. Now, nirvi, coming from the prefix nir, meaning without or beyond, vi, meaning apart from, and kalpa, meaning order. So, without, beyond, order. Beyond human comprehension, beyond which we can imagine, beyond which we can even conceive. So with samadhi, or nirvikalpa samadhi, as I was just saying, it is impossible to conceive with the human mind. It is the ineffable. It is impossible to put into words. I don't know about all of you, but after my first 5-MeO-DMT experience, I struggled to put this experience into words, to use language to communicate something that was completely beyond anything that I had ever imagined. So I am going to use the words of Mr. Daniel Schmidt, as he is quite good at using language to describe that which cannot be described. Now, he is speaking of nirvikalpa samadhi here, but we can easily substitute this word for a bufo experience. In nirvikalpa samadhi, there is a cessation of self-activity, of all seeking and doing. We can only speak about what falls away as we approach it and what reappears when we return from it. There is neither perception nor non-perception, neither thing nor no thing, neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. It is absolute, unfathomable, and inscrutable to the mind. When the self returns to activity, there is a not knowing, a kind of rebirth, and everything becomes new again. We are left with the perfume of the divine, which lingers longer as one evolves on the path. So, how do we take this incredible experience and view it through this lens of yoga? The second line of the Yoga Sutras is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is to calm the whirlpool or the spiral of mind. So our ego or our mind, which is constantly in activity, constantly trying to figure things out, constantly trying to be in the driver's seat. Yoga, true yoga, is the vanishing of said mind, the calming of this whirlpool. In engaging with this medicine through the yogic lens, we first begin with preparation. Now, I always like to begin with stating, as Adyashanti says, enlightenment is a destructive process. Make no mistake. This is seldom roses and strawberries. There is a scary part to this. And it's important that we all realize that before embarking on this path. So when we work with people, and I work with my beautiful wife here, who I'll mention in this moment, but let's say we are doing one of our retreats, and we're beginning to work with some sitters. We begin a few weeks prior with journaling on the kleshas. The kleshas are the 5 root sources in the yogic tradition. So 5 causes that lead us to suffer in our daily lives. The first one is avidya. Avidya translates to ignorance. Not ignorance as in stupidity, but ignorance as in not aware that we are infinite totality. Not aware that we are all consciousness. Not aware that we are God. If you don't know you're God, you may suffer a little bit. Nextly, we have asmita, which is egoism, or identifying with your persona. So we come into this existence and we take on this individual character. But sooner or later, the mind is going to decide that this is the whole thing. And the mind is going to begin to attach to our assumed persona, our personality. We're going to begin identifying with ourself and limiting ourself to this simple structure. That can certainly lead to trouble. We begin to take things a little personally. We begin to take things a little too seriously at that point. This leads us to raga, attachments, attaching to your identity, attaching to your religion or spiritual practice. And we'll touch on that later as well. Raga takes us to dvesa and abnivesa. Dvesa is aversion. So once we have forgotten that we are the Almighty Infinite and we have attached to this small identity and we've begun to attach ourselves to our surroundings, our belongings, our spiritual badges, we get a little comfort zone going, and that comfort zone starts to shrink. And we can take on aversions to stepping outside this comfort zone, but as many of us know, real growth seldom happens within this comfort zone. And in that same hand of aversion, we have fear, mainly fear of death. If you think this is all going to end at the moment of death, it may cause a little confusion and stir some things up. So with these 5 kleshas, we have people start journaling and seeing what kleshas or what causes of suffering are present in their life at the moment. This helps us start to really close in on an intention. So, with this intention, we begin to move forward in an effort to rid ourselves of this patterning that causes us to forget our true nature. And this is where we need to remember that enlightenment is a destructive process. So I will speak on the destructive aspect of the universe, or Shiva energy. In Vedantic or non-dual or core of Hindu philosophy or yogic philosophy, the founding principle is Atman is Brahman. So Atman, the individual soul, is the same as Brahman, totality, source consciousness. Brahman cannot be described, Brahman cannot be depicted or really understood because Brahman is the ineffable. Brahman is beyond our understandings. So in an attempt to understand, we split Brahman off into 3 qualities. We have creation, preservation, and destruction. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Shiva represents the destructive quality or force of the universe or consciousness. But everything moves in a cycle. Everything moves in spirals. And to create new, we must burn away the old. So Shiva is that destructive energy, that burning away of the old paradigm, that burning away of our attachment to our assumed identity to make way for everything. So I like to use the image of Shiva engaging in the Tandav or Tandava, the destructive dance as he burns away in old age. And I'm going to tap into my inner Alan Watts here and quote him in this description because he was the man. So when he's speaking of Shiva engaged in the Tandav, he says, and he comes on with a blue body and a necklace of skulls and hands carrying various weapons and instruments of death. But one hand is like this, as if to say, don't worry, it's all in your mind. It's all a big act. It is all as if it were just the outpouring of your own consciousness. Many of us have undergone this rebirthing experience in the depths of a 5-MeO or Toad experience. So, when coming out of this experience, when undergoing the rebirthing process, if you have gone full non-dual and you're starting to come back and the default mode network is popping online one little bit at a time, there's going to be a whole lot going on. And I feel it is very important to have a masculine and feminine presence. So, as I said, I work with my beautiful wife, Mary, over here. And Mary is a death doula. She is an end-of-life coach. So she is right there to help these people rebirth themselves. I am there to hold this yogic container and use this philosophy and guide, lead the meditations. But she's the mama, and she's going to help you rebirth yourself. This medicine experience is definitely a rebirthing. So how do we integrate this into our daily lives? Without an integration plan or without some sort of tool, this simply becomes a peak experience. It becomes a huge experience that begins to fade away like a dream ever so quickly, pretty much immediately after. So we go back to these 8 limbs of yoga. We use this for integration as a step-by-step plan. So the first 2 limbs in this 8-limbed path are yama and niyama. The yamas are self-regulating behaviors. And I will just mention 2, because I've mentioned these in a few other talks recently. Ahimsa, which is nonviolence to all sentient beings, including yourselves. And satya, truthfulness. Be truthful to those around you. Be truthful with yourself. Be honest in your growth. I would say those 2 are very important for integration, as well as from niyama, which are personal practices for your inner world. The most important 2, and I feel these are probably the 2 most important concepts to keep in mind while integrating from a non-dual experience. One is svadhyaya, self-study. Be aware of your flow. Be aware of the flow of your consciousness, of your emotions. Know that we are not the mind, we are not the ego, but the ego is our tool to have this human experience. We don't let it run the show, but observe it. We don't need to attach to these emotions, but see where it's going. See what makes you tick. See what makes you come together and go through your daily life. The next is Ishvara Pranidhan, and that is God consciousness, awareness of God. Always being aware of the totality of it. Always being aware that your presence does not stop where your skin stops. Your awareness does not stop at the top of your head or the bottom of your feet. Be aware that you are infinite. After that, we have our further limbs. We have asana, which are the physical postures. These are to strengthen and balance the nervous system, to prepare the body to sit for long periods of time in meditation, to balance the energetic pathways known as nadis, and there are approximately 72,000 within and around the human body. So this helps bring everything into order, keep the body in good state, and it really helps to still the mind a bit once you've moved your body around a little bit. After asana, we have pranayama, the beautiful breathing techniques. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of different pranayama. This is to control, manipulate, and direct the pranic flow within and around your body. And when I say pranic flow, I mean your energetic flow. Prana is your energy, your ki or your chi, that which keeps us alive and sustains. After pranayama, we really begin to move more into the inward work. We have pratyahara. Pratyahara is a withdrawal of the 5 senses. It is where we begin to take our awareness inwards. We start to tune out those 5 senses. This is far easier said than done. I've got a great quote here from Judith Lassiter. She says, Pratyahara is when we have space between the world around us and our responses to that world. So it does not mean go mute, deaf, dumb, does not mean completely cut everything off, but it means tune your focus within, listen to what is happening within, start to understand the energetic flow in your body. After that, we have dharana. Dharana is one-pointed focus. This is where we really begin to hone our awareness. So this can be done in many different ways. It can be done in Tradaka meditation, gazing at a candle flame. It can be done using a yantra, a piece of sacred geometry or an image, and holding this image in your mind and training your mind to focus solely on this. It can be a concept. It can be the sun. There are pratyahara practices where people take in their nourishment and energy from the sun by simply focusing their attention and awareness on the sun. From dharana, we have focused on this one object. We begin to move to dhyana, and that is where the lines between us and this object begin to blur. This is where we begin to get into a flow meditation, where we begin to exit our subject-object relationship and begin to merge with the object. We begin to find ourselves in this vast space. And from there is where we remember samadhi. And samadhi simply is. And one thing I must stress about samadhi is this is not something we attain. There are 8 limbs to samadhi, but it doesn't mean this is an 8-stepped path to reach somewhere. These are 8 steps to help you remember that which you already are. Samadhi is our baseline consciousness, according to yogic philosophy. So it is not about getting anything or gaining anything. It is about letting go of that which holds us back from remembering our true nature. And this is really where we can carry this into our daily life. This is where we really begin to remember that we are the medicine. Yeah. So we have just had a full awakening experience in our Toad or 5-MeO experience. Where do we go now? You know, a lot of us can really get down on ourselves because, say, a week or two after our big experience where we've just been all loving, ever-present God, and we find ourselves stuck in traffic thinking less than godly things about the person in front of us. And we can get down on ourselves. This is what is called a non-abiding awakening. So this is a temporary awakening. It doesn't mean that it's just an awakening experience and nothing's going to happen with it. This is a natural catalyst moving you towards abiding awakening, lasting awakening. But you have to expect to oscillate a bit back and forth between an awakened state and an unawakened state. We have to give ourselves permission to be human during this time. How do we keep ourselves in check, really, on this journey from non-abiding to abiding awakening state? With yoga. It's so great. It's got all the answers for us already. So I really feel that yama and niyama, the first 2 limbs, set up the foundation to ensure that we walk our path with integrity, that we are not harming anyone else, whether physically, mentally, energetically, spiritually, and also are not harming ourselves. They can keep our path clear. During this time of transitioning to abiding awakening, a very helpful technique is to dissect any thought that you may have that pulls you out of an awakened state or pulls you out of unity consciousness. You may be in that just bliss, thinking and feeling, and someone says something that just triggers you in a certain way and pulls you right out of it. So then it's on us to go within and see exactly why that thought pulled us away from remembering that we are God, remembering that we are love. Figure out everything that led to that thought. And we begin to snip away at the things that keep us tied to this suffering under the ego's regime. And with that, I will also add that the ego is not our enemy. It is not something to crush, kill, or destroy. We have to have the ego to have this human experience. We just need to develop the right relationship with this ego. So, speaking of the ego, during this transition from a non-abiding awakening to an abiding awakening, the ego can get a hold of this experience. The ego can say, "Ha, I got it." The ego can just decide that it has become awakened. But remember, one does not awaken. I do not have an awakening. An awakening occurs within me. Consciousness or awareness awakens within me. My ego does not awaken. So, during our spiritual progress, we can find that the ego is a tricky little guy. We may elevate ourselves to a certain state of awareness, but then the ego is going to make its way up there too and set up shop and say, okay, I now identify with this state of being. This is me. I am this kind of person, etc. And this is where we get the awakened ego. The ego decides that it is awakened. And this can be an interesting thing. This is usually at this point where people decide that they have transcended the need to either work with medicine or meditate anymore. This is usually where people decide that they've reached it, and now it's just up to everyone else to get there. It can be a difficult state to deal with, but just know that it is very natural, and it is still part of the process. We've got to gently massage the ego into the passenger seat. And it takes a little while sometimes. But a big trap we need to be aware of is, even though these spiritual practices are so effective as tools to climb the mountain, we have to remember that they are just stories. Spiritual practices are just paradigms in of themselves. And we need to use them to get to where we need to go. But when we get there, we need to let it go. We need to understand that it is just a tool. It is not an identity. And what practice works for me may not work for this gentleman right here. What practice works for him might not work for me. We all have different what's called samskars, or energetic imprints. We've all had different life experiences. So different things will resonate with different people. Ramana Maharishi likens spiritual practices to thorns being used to remove other thorns, which makes a lot of sense. They're useful tools to remove that which separate us. But if we identify with that tool, it will also separate us. We see this in the medicine community with people dividing up between bufo and synthetic or yada yada. We see it in the yogic community big time. Ashtangis think hatha yogis are lazy. Kundalini yogis think other yogis are impure. It's hilarious. It's what happened with religion though. So I'm going to read a quote, and I ask that you just close your eyes and really absorb this one. All that is necessary to awaken to yourself as the radiant emptiness of spirit is to stop seeking something more or better or different, and to turn your attention inward to the awake silence that you are. I'm going to read this one more time. All that is necessary to awaken to yourself as the radiant emptiness of spirit is to stop seeking something more or better or different, and to turn your attention inward to awake the silence that you are. So, as Swami Vivekananda said, the end of all world religions is the realizing of God within oneself. With that, there's lots of love. If you'd like to learn more or chat more, my website is itsallsource.com. It's all source. We've got retreats in Jamaica with our brother Corey as well over here. And we call them Samadhi retreats, and they're just intensives that involve using the container of yoga and yogic philosophy and non-dual Vedantic philosophy to safely work with this medicine and to integrate it into your daily life, because it can go really far. The medicine experience is just the beginning. You can take it into your daily life, and many of us here are, and it's a beautiful gift that we're all figuring out that we will be able to open up to the world. Do we have time for questions? How are we doing here? Yeah? Awesome. Oh, I never do that. Who's got a question? We don't have any questions. Oh, we got a hand over here. Yes, brother.
When's your retreat in Jamaica?
When is our retreat in Jamaica? It is October 24th through 29th. And it's in Port Antonio, Jamaica. And it's pretty awesome. Any other questions? Yes, brother.
So when dealing with the kind of the awakened ego, are there any tips or tricks that you kind of utilize for people that are leaving the retreats?
When dealing with the awakened ego, are there any tips or helpful hints that could help? Love and patience. Adyashanti says there is no point in attempting to intervene with an awakened ego or let them know that that is the situation or could be, because it will not be heard. Love and patience and hold space. Oh. Any other ones? Yes, dear brother.
Yes. I don't know if it was yesterday, one of the speakers was talking about some of the patients, no, well, not patients, but people that are doing bufo. They want to escape the, let's say, the illusion that we're in the Maya.
Yes, yes.
And so I think it was Beto that was talking about this maybe, that he was saying there's a danger there for people not wanting to deal with their problems in their everyday life, and they see maybe the samadhi state that bufo offers as maybe a place to escape, you know? My question is, for example, there is also a fear in the opposite way, in my opinion, like maybe some of us love our life in Maya. We love our children, our families. We have a mission here to maybe make this a more beautiful Maya and to awaken all of our other selves, you know, and maybe we can't find absolute happiness because we see some of our other selves still asleep, you know? Of
course.
So there's also a fear of not coming back once we're in the, in the bufo state. Sometimes we want to make like a promise that we want to come back to our family, you know, this kind of thing. Are you aware of, or is someone else aware of anyone that has stayed in the bufo state, in the samadhi state? I don't know if anyone has that information.
The fabled perma trip. I, to my knowledge, have never heard or read of anyone who have gone under on the bufo or 5-MeO and not come back. This is a definite fear of the mind, and I'd say usually one of the first fears people encounter when they begin to work with psychedelics. I know I did back in the day, because especially with this one, this is a substance that quickly pulls the carpet from underneath you. It quickly dissolves everything that is familiar to you. So if the mind is still a little bit present, then that gets funneled and filtered through the subconscious as, oh my God, I'm dying. I am never going to come back from this. You did it now. And it's a very, very common fear. But I feel it is related to both avidya and abhinivesa. So ignorance of ourselves as limitless energy and fear of death, fear of the unknown. When processed through the mind, it can certainly be experienced like that. And then as for people wanting to escape this illusory world of Maya and to just stay steeped in samadhi, that is an excellent question as well and an excellent topic. I just say, remember that we are spiritual beings here on earth to have a human experience. We chose to come here and do this dance in our weird human suits and figure it all out together. We chose to go through the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, the beautiful, the crazy, all of it. It's all part of it. And a Toad experience isn't a one-way ticket off to the Netherlands. Reaching samadhi or nirvikalpa samadhi isn't either. We're going to have to come back here, come back and share what we have learned, brighten our light so we can become a lighthouse for our communities and those around us. Some people can certainly have that tendency to want to go back under and to chase that feeling. So it is up to us as facilitators to recognize that in a person, and hopefully we are already giving them the tools they need to make it a lasting experience anyway.
I have just a second part of that. Scott Olson just mentioned that some of the Mahatmas may have been also using some of the plant wisdom.
I have no doubt
to reach their illumination. And but do we know of, besides the ego of a facilitator that may believe that he is illuminated, do we know of anyone that has reached illumination through the bufo substance, or
through the bufo substance?
Because I have only known of illuminated masters that have worked through spiritual,
of course,
practice. But I just don't know if in these last 10 or 15 years that this has boomed. Do we know of any person that has stayed in a state of illumination through the bufo?
Do I know of anyone who has stayed in a state of illumination post-bufo? Martin Ball says he has. And I would say, is it possible to attain a lasting state of awakening through bufo? It's possible to attain a lasting state of awakening through crossing the street. Is there anyone who really is demonstrating full awakened all the time? I can't answer that. Not that I'm aware of. But hey, it's a new medicine. We're all getting there. I feel in a little bit of time it's going to be just very interesting to see where this all goes and where everybody's different paths and progress lead us. I will say in working with bufo, I have found myself, I do not claim to be in a constant state of samadhi by any means. I entered samadhi the first time well before I began working again with psychedelics, just through yoga twice. But post working with Toad and 5-MeO, I have found my ability to reach these states be greatened by quite a lot. It's all about just building patterns. So no matter what you're doing, if you're building those patterns in the brain and you're doing something to integrate and implement it into your daily life and taking advantage of that neuroplasticity and those connections built, then I think the potential is limitless. 5 minutes? Oh, look at that. We got time for more. Do we have another question? No, all right. Do I get to read another quote then? I don't have another quote. You guys have a beautiful day. Oh, we have one more question. NRAC.
Joe,
Okay.
could you be able to expand a bit on what you're talking about, the way yourself and Mary work together?
Yes. So the way Mary and I work together, as I said, the masculine-feminine partnership is very important to me, and I feel in this work. So we'll just give a little rundown, I guess, of how an ideal day would go. We begin, of course, with screening, a lengthy medical, psychological, spiritual, emotional screening. And then with that journaling as well, then we have another phone call to narrow in on intention, talk a little bit more. Depending on who the person is, I may prescribe some Vedic literature, perhaps a certain meditation, perhaps a certain breath work, something like that. On the day of, everyone arrives. We begin with foot washing ceremony, which is found in old Hindu practices as well as old Christian practices. And Mary guides each participant to set intention as they're picking petals from flowers and dropping them in the water. And she cleans their feet, and everyone goes into circle, rinsed and ready for illumination. And then I'll yammer off at the mouth for a while like I am now and talk about this stuff. And then we'll do some breath work, some pranayama, and that will change every time depending on the group. Just as the young lady who led the chant and the drumming yesterday was saying, you know, certain drumming they'll use to raise the heartbeat, certain drumming they'll use to calm down. So if I'm feeling the circle is very bit hyper and a bit nervous, I may use some calming breath, some stuff to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Maybe some nadi shodhana, some alternate nostril breathing to balance both sympathetic and parasympathetic, or perhaps some more invigorating breathing to stimulate the sympathetic to really get a little more awake, a little more warrior with it. And then we'll do some guided meditation, and then we sit in circle, if it is a circle and not a private, and we will go one at a time, bringing the aspirant or participant into the center of the circle and administering the medicine. And we kind of stay out of their way while they're under. There'll be some gentle words from myself or Mary. Sometimes Mary will begin to do a little bit of inner child work with them or go under and do a little bit of Reiki or work on them. We always make sure everyone is okay with a little subtle touch if it comes out, and we'll never do it until the tail end of their experience. If it happens to be a female in the circle, we will let them know that if they would like, if their clothes are to come off in session, all men will leave the room, and Mary will hold space for that. After the circle, after that's all done, and we use yogic music in crystal bowls, and the yogic music is tuned to 432 hertz, and we use a little chanting too. Then after the experience, I'll yammer more like this, and we'll talk about integration a whole bunch. And then each person receives an individual email with a tailored integration plan for them that is based directly off of the Yoga Sutras. So specific things to focus on in yama or niyama, specific pranayama to focus on, or a specific physical work to do, specific meditation, and it'll all be based on your journaling, your experience, and your report of your experience. And then we just make ourselves available day and night for anyone who is sat to reach out anytime and discuss. Yeah.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time, but I just wanted to, I don't know if it's a question or a comment or an observation or a gratitude to say, from what I understand, maybe a core takeaway from the Samadhi mystical experience in the Eastern traditions, you know, Toad community, the Mexican community, they might be like, well, how is that relevant? It sounds interesting, but it's another culture, it's an ancient thing, this yoga thing, does it really work? But from what you're saying, the peak experience on 5-MeO and the Toad itself is identical to the maps and the pathways that the Vedic traditions have mapped when they had an entheogen, the soma, and that this space that's revealed within us is a geography. It's a space we all contain, and we're just remembering how to get there.
Yes.
And that the Toad is training wheels, and I love the Toad, we revere the Toad, we respect the Toad, and it's a finger pointing at the source, but it's not the source itself.
Exactly, exactly. It's all in here, and this medicine is here in the infinite now to show us how. It's not going to give us the answers, it's not going to fix us, but it will show us the work. It will give us the homework.
Thank you, Joël Brierre.